Okay, so today there's a series of things, I guess. The big one, my brother left this evening to go to Oklahoma before going to Wales. So that means I get to tend to their dogs for the next 2 weeks, which will be exciting. It kind of sucks because the easiest path over there is no longer available because of construction, so I have to backtrack, and it takes like an extra 5 minutes to go that way now. But when I wake up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, it still makes more sense to go over there and potty the dogs then, and then go back home and go to sleep for a little bit longer, rather than just going back to sleep and then having to get up earlier. So yeah, hopefully there's no issues with needing to get over there for realtors or anything to bring anybody by. He said that it shouldn't be anything like that, since they still have the people that want to buy the house. They just are a little bit of a standstill on their end because they're on, like, the people that want to buy it, because their house sale fell through. So still big question mark. But as long as there's no substantial jumps otherwise, one way or another, then hopefully everything will be fine. But is what it is. Today's Father's Day, and again, I just really don't give a shit. Got a message this morning from my pattern app that I have started a new cycle, and I don't think I even wrote down what it was called. Something about expansion. So it says, from June 15th, 2025 to March 11th, 2026, Jupiter conjunct my moon with a Neptune complex. So just to, I guess, go back there, of course I have all these Cancer placements in my chart, so very water heavy, absolutely no earth whatsoever. And then I have a Neptune complex, which adds more water. So cool, right? Because I needed more water in my chart. Anyway, this is right now. Any struggles with defining yourself are being amplified. Growing up, you may have merged with your environment and been heavily influenced by family and culture. If you still lack boundaries and a clear sense of self, this feeling may be magnified right now. Things are being thrown into doubt for a reason. You're being forced to empty out who you are to create space for something new. If you still have difficulty establishing boundaries and being your authentic self, this may feel magnified right now, but this energy is also supportive and can help you heal those wounds. This influence gives you the confidence to be yourself and figure out what you want, helping you to overcome what may have stopped you in the past. During this cycle, you're encouraged to realign with a core part of yourself, but this process can feel confusing. Any clarity you thought you had seems to be slipping away. There's a sense that the ordinary and practical world, or the materialistic side of life, somehow isn't real or significant. That's been increasing for a while. Nothing feels real. I keep finding myself writing that down. It's like everything just feels like it's just a dream and not, I don't know. Anyway, it can feel like your life is kind of an illusion, or as though you're lost in dreamland and can't see what's real. What you thought you understood is being thrown into doubt for a reason, so don't try to pin it down. While it can be frustrating, especially if you're used to controlling the terms of your life, this can also be an incredibly spiritual time if you're willing. Good thing I'm willing. If you're being forced to empty out who you are and remove any unnecessary values you absorbed during your upbringing to create space for something new to emerge. Possibilities you've never seen before seem to be opening up, and now there are multiple directions to choose. Instead of holding on, learn to let go and accept this momentary lack of control in your life. Your perspective and what you think you know is being replaced by an entirely new vision. And then this other thing that also popped up today just because I needed the reminder. It said, based on my Cancer Moon and Cancer Mercury placements, it says, when communicating, you're affected by other people's thoughts and feelings. You have the ability to tune into other people's emotions, and they likely feel understood around you and that you're able to provide helpful solutions to their problems. While you're highly emotionally intelligent, at times you might be so driven to help someone that you don't check in to see if they actually need assistance. Or your communication could be so focused on giving to others that your mood depends on whether they're following your advice. It's okay to communicate from your heart, but don't forget to consider your own feelings. I don't know, that just it seemed like it went right along with the confusion with the family stuff, merging with your environment and all that exciting shit. So yeah, so that's the current thing. So, my little sticker, I like her a lot. I don't even know where. I think I got her at the Interpath store. And book 14 now, because 14. You finished 13 yesterday and moved to 14, which this one's a little bit bigger, so I like that anyway. Yeah, and my great grandmother's chair is in the car with me, waiting to stop by the storage unit on the way back home and put it in there. I've been thinking about it for a few days, and today I'm going to go ahead and do that. See, I left the house. Okay, the thing today at my aunt's house started at 2. It was 2:09 when I was on my way over there. And of course, I have to backtrack, go the long way to get over there, which, fine. When I turned on, well, one of the points that I would have been at to normally go to my aunt's house, when I got to that road, my other aunt called me to see if we were coming, because apparently my parents hadn't gotten there yet either, which they left a little bit before I did. And I was like, yeah, I'm on my way now. And she was okay. She's like, just checking because you're not here yet. It's like, obviously. So, yeah, I get off the phone. And I missed her call the first time because I had my windows down, and so it was windy, and I had music turned up. And then I realized my phone was also ringing. It's like, oh, because it's turned way down. So I called her back, got all that figured out. Then, like, not even 5 minutes later, my mom calls. Actually, she called right as I was pulling onto my aunt's road. And as I'm parking my car, says, can you go get my pineapple shirt? I forgot it. It's like, the fuck? What pineapple shirt? Apparently, okay, my aunt, the one whose house we were at, she got all excited she found like this place that had like some shirts she got really into and bought a bunch for my grandfather before he passed away. And one of them was a pineapple shirt. And everybody liked it so much, apparently, like between the staff at the rehab place he was at. I don't know if it was like the actual hospital or if it was just the rehab, or maybe even both. But there were lots of comments about the pineapple shirt. She really loved the pineapple shirt. And then when he finally kicked the bucket, she got all of them pineapple shirts. So the sisters as well as my grandma. And they were all supposed to wear them today because it's Father's Day. And because he's not there. So it's like, yeah, boy. So I pull in over at their house, and it's like 2:29, right? So it takes me 20 minutes to get over there. And then she's calling me, wanting me to go back and get the shirt. And it's like, you know what? To have an excuse to have less time around the family, okay. You know, so I went back home, got the damn shirt, and it's like, well, since I'm there, I tweaked the nails again. I put a little bit of nail polish on before I left the house. This hand, I kind of botched at one point, so it got technically get 2 coats, and the other hand only got 1. And I, like, the entire time over there, it's like, this is kind of annoying me because one hand is darker than the other. So then it's like, well, shit, since I have to go back, then I might as well, put another coat on. And I did, but yeah, I kind of botched my thumb. But anyway, I tweaked them anyway. And I went ahead and loaded the chair in the car. I did that before I did the nails. But I did the nails before I found my mom's shirt, and it was way more complicated than I thought it would be, and that's why I fucked up the thumbnail, which meant I had to go back and fix it again. So it took a little time. By the time I finally got back over there, I think it was like 3. So it was just kind of a pain in the ass with the back and forth. My brother and his daughter were supposed to leave. Well, I mean, they did leave today. They were going to leave earlier in the day, but his stomach's been bothering him the past few days, so they didn't leave until like 5, I think. 4:30, 5 o'clock in there somewhere. He called me, and then my cousin, who had just gotten back from Illinois, came out and kind of talked with her a little bit. So it's just all these little things. It's like at one point I went in and had like some strawberries and blueberries and watermelon, and was just standing in the kitchen, and my mom and her sisters and the only other cousin that was there for the entire thing. None of the guys were there. The middle sister's daughter was there the entire time. I showed up at 3, but was almost there sooner. And then the youngest sister's daughter came in as everybody was getting, well, like right before everybody was getting ready to leave, so she had time to say hi to everybody. But she said my grandma kept falling asleep. It's like, apparently she stayed up all night washing her hair or something at the nursing home. It's like, okay, did anybody know she was doing that? Whatever. Just everybody apparently was kind of just the question mark that is grandma. So, yeah. But anyway, when I went in and was eating the fruits, then they started in on their wonderful memories of my grandfather. It's like, not interested, no thanks. So I went back outside and finished eating my little snack, and then went back out front. I spent most of my time on the porch by myself, writing. So worked for me. I've discovered a new YouTube page that I like. It's called Blush Lily, and she does like wax readings. That's kind of interesting. So, and they're kind of on point. And I watched one, and she was talking about like this. Seems like a female figure with a very dark energy. Well, very passive aggressive. Then it's like sending you this negative energy. It's like, hey, do you want to count that as my mom or my grandma? Because they're both on there. Right? And especially grandma right now, since like she has no access to my energy whatsoever. My mom has limited access because of course I have to live there for right now, but small doses, but she still has some kind of access. So then, when she goes around my grandma, and then my grandma's all firing off with, what did I do to Sarah? Why doesn't she like me? Like, yeah, we're not having that conversation. Because that opens a whole can of worms that we just don't want to avoid, or we don't want to deal with. Which I don't know if at some point I will need to. If I'm forced to, I will, but mostly I'm just trying to avoid that conversation altogether, because I don't feel like anybody in the family, aside from my brother, one uncle, and one of my cousins, I don't think any of the rest of them could really handle that conversation. So, especially because it kind of challenges the whole structure of the family dynamic, right? So I just don't want to. I was watching Evil Dead 2 last night, and I had the door open because I was trying to put some clothes away and, try to get an idea of what I have in there and what I can go ahead and start packing easily next, right? So I can get stuff moved out to the storage unit more. And anytime I'm in there watching a movie, I leave the door open for the dogs. Because if they want to come and go, they should be able to come and go. Because if they have to potty, obviously I don't want that happening in my room or whatever. And, Taz likes to go lay on the couch and all that fun stuff. So, anyway, I kind of got distracted on the putting clothes away. I was trying to figure out what to do with, I now have 3 drawers of t-shirts. I was trying to figure out if I could purge some more of them out, and I think I will, but I think right now there's actually a bunch that I'll probably use to pack things. So I've talked about my cabinet of birds that my grandma was so focused on me taking out of her house a while back, and so I had to go out of my way to make space for this cabinet of birds just for it to it does at our house the same thing it did at her house. It just is there as a cabinet of bird things, right? So it's like ceramic or whatever. Which, as I was going through them, okay, she's been talking for years about how the bird cabinet was mine, and I don't know if it just came up. I don't think it came up just because I had birds. I think there was something before that. I don't know why she got set on me having the birds, but she did. When I was going through the cabinet, some of them are actually pretty cool. Like there's the one that has this big eagle's nest, and it's got the parents, and then it's got like 2 or 3 babies in the nest. So that one's pretty cool. And there's like this big swan thing. A bunch of blue jays, cardinals, all that fun stuff. And I ended up liking them more than I thought I would when I was packing them up to bring them over to our house, which was an ordeal. I ended up taking a couple storage totes and a whole bunch of my leggings because that was what I had to wrap them in. And so I just take several pairs of leggings, throw them in the totes, and then go over there and wrap the birds up in the leggings and pack them away in these 2 totes, and then load up those and the cabinet. I wanted to say I got it all in this car. I'm pretty sure I did. It's got decent space back there when I drop the seats down, so I'm pretty sure I did. But yeah, it was something I did it all by myself too. My dad was available, and it was pre-stroke father, so theoretically he could have helped, but he ended up not because I was rocking the strong, independent woman approach and did it all by myself. It ended up being lightweight too, so it worked out for me. But that's the biggest thing with my family is I don't like asking for help, because then they feel like you owe them something. It's why can't you do something just because you don't suck as a human? Why are we now obligated to owe somebody something? Whatever. So, if I have to do things by myself just to avoid asking my family for help, fine. I am pretty confident that one of these days I will have people in my life that don't suck to that degree. But this is what I got right now, so I'll probably do most of what I can by myself. And the way it is currently, if I get myself situated where I can actually move out of there anytime soon, I would be able to load a truck by myself. I am confident of that. Not that it would be easy per se, but I can do it. So, yeah, like I've had lots of lots of practice on moving stuff and learning how to move and pack things so I don't have to ask my family more than absolutely necessary. But anyway, so as I was sitting there on the bed trying to decide what to do with these other shirts and getting distracted with the fact that the movie was on. It was so weird. I'd seen the first one, I had never seen the second one. And of course, I watched the first one again. I got them all from the library. I think all of them from the library. Evil Dead Rise is due back tomorrow. So I plan to watch that one and the one before it, which I think is a remake of the first one. I don't know. That's tonight's agenda. Although I might watch the other movie in the morning. Who knows? Anyway, it's due back tomorrow, so I'm sitting there. I get distracted with the TV, right? And then I'm aware that my father is standing outside of my room. Because he makes a lot of noise. And their room is across from my room, so meh. But anyway, I hear him shuffle down the hallway, but then I don't hear him open the door, so it's like I know he's just standing there, right? So I eventually look back just to confirm that he's still standing there, awkwardly. And because I looked at him, he's like, "What are you watching?" So I say, "Evil Dead." He says, "Figures," and walks off. It's like, you literally don't have to speak to me. Ever. You know, I was telling my cousin today, it's like, I told my brother last night too, it's like, I have the door open for the dogs to come and go. Not for him to have to try to socialize at that moment. That is not why I had the door open at all. But it's so aggravating because apparently if I have the door open for the dogs, that's supposed to be their way in on trying to have a conversation with me or whatever. But with my father, it's always just the judgmental shit. So it's like, why do you feel the need to speak? Because obviously we didn't learn the lesson from Bambi. If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. And I feel like I've heard that a lot in my lifetime. But my family is definitely like, they only ever have negative things to say. So, yeah. But it was just so aggravating because it's like, you literally don't have to speak to me. Because we both know the only reason you're standing there wanting the way in to speak to me is so you can say something shitty and try to get a reaction out of me. I have been making it a priority this week to take baths right before I go to bed with like the rose salt water, and it's nice. And then I go to bed and I'm in a great mood, and then I wake up and I'm in a good mood. And then it's like, you know, clear the junk from my system, and then, you know, then of course I have the day, and then that kind of calms down a little bit, and it's not so wonderful, but then I can do it again, and, you know, have the more salt in the tub tonight. But, oh my god, I'm so tired of these people. That was one thing with the Blush Lily reading. She's talking about the negative family influence, and then like she's got like the little toothpick or whatever, and she's kind of messing with the wax, and at one point she commented about taking you over here away from the family. It's like, yes please. Totally down for that and ready to get a new situation going. And of course, my cousin, when she was out there, I asked her how being back home is. And she's like talking about how disheartening it is to be almost 30 and living back with her parents. It's like, hey, felt. It's like, I feel that in a big way. At 41, good grief. On the other hand, I am confident that everything that I have learned these past few years of being back here and realizing that my family is the toxic element that it is the very thing that will keep me from ever having to come back here. But it's like it had to happen with the divorce of the toxic relationship, and then divorcing my whole belief system and realizing my family is exactly how I got into that shitty relationship. And because of that, and realizing how toxic everybody is, with very few exceptions, my cousin, my brother, my aunts are like, I've always gotten along with them a lot better than I've gotten along with my mom and one uncle, but at the same time, it's like, I know that when I leave, if I have connection with like my aunts, they'll still probably report back to my mom on anything that's happening with me. So it's like, I don't know how much connection I'll have with them. And the one aunt, the middle sister, her husband is on her Facebook stuff. So it's like, that alone is reason for me to not want to have or stay connected to her, because he absolutely loves the opportunity to go take everybody's information and give it to wherever, and it's like, and like one of the most aggravating things with him. So there was this time when I was a senior in high school, we had a 75-gallon fish tank, right? And we had these two iridescent sharks that were like 20 years old or something, or pushing it hard at that point. And I guess my dad was walking through there one morning, and one of them had jumped out of the tank and it was on the back of the couch. So when I was walking through, my dad is standing there at the aquarium with his holding this fish and trying to like talk it into living. And he's like, "Come on, big guy, you can do it." And it's like, what on earth are you doing? And he, told me that the fish got out of the tank. Didn't know how long he was out there, but, he wasn't dead yet. He was trying to give the fish CPR. I don't know. But he stuck him back in there, and it was just this big whole thing, right? So I told that story at some point to the family. I don't know how many times that uncle took that story and would tell me it again. I was like, dude, that's my fucking story. I was there. It's like, you don't have to tell me my story. I know this one very well. It's like, what the hell? But it's like, it's like he doesn't have his own life, so the only thing he has that he can do is to repeat stories that other people have told. And it's like, that's lame. God, and he's one. So baby grandpa is his grandbaby, right? So he is the pushiest, I think, of trying to get me involved with that baby. And I don't want anything to do with that baby. I've talked about that on here many times. My cousin, I'm, happy for her and her husband. They got their baby, all that fun stuff. I am confident that is my grandfather reincarnated. And I think even more so because of the, the energetic cords in this family and how tightly bound they are. I'm confident that everybody's buying into my grandfather's illusion, especially there at the end, and just trying to prolong his life for as long as they possibly could, and blah blah blah. I'm confident that there's it just pulled him right back into a new body, because the the fetus was, my cousin was pregnant at the time my grandfather passed away, so that was part of their Christmas present to my grandmother, was to tell her, or let her be the one to reveal the baby's name, the baby that hadn't been born yet, and his middle name was my grandfather's first name. So it's like, I feel like that was just kind of one of those things too. Just like, that's an invitation to come back into that body, right? So it's like, yeah, but then running the baby's birth chart, oh my God, he's got more Pisces than I got Cancer placements. There's going to be lots of karma in this life from the last one. So I'm confident of that. But there too, the soul's not to blame by any means. It was just one experience, and that experience that my grandfather had was necessary for me to have the current way of understanding things that I am learning, and really, making sense of things, at that energetic level. So it's like, I am grateful for the lessons that I have learned. I am more grateful that I don't have to do those over. I'm one and done on that bullshit, because this has definitely been a life that I'm glad I don't have to do over, because it's been a little rocky. But now that I know where a lot of that toxicity comes in, and of course, part of that is because my birth chart is set up for me to just kind of, be naturally inclined to do things that weren't beneficial for myself, like not have boundaries and not realize that I needed boundaries. So therefore I absorb everybody else's stuff and take on everybody else's stuff as my own. But then, because of course, my religious upbringing, religion doesn't like astrology and all those kind of woo-woo things, because you can literally find out a whole lot about yourself just by looking into your birth chart. So big fan of that. And I avoided all of that like the plague when I was trying to be the little good Christian girl that I tried to be for so long. But again, divorcing my ex and divorcing my ex belief system has been huge in really being able to find, learn more about myself, figure out who I am and who I want to be, and try to make something different of my life now that I realize I've been absorbing everybody else's shit and I don't want to do that anymore. So, and since there's a breeze, make this comment about absorbing everybody else's shit, but I gotta say, the fields, they're like spreading manure around, whatever, and that's all I've been noticing, like on the drive back from my aunt's house, and like just sitting over here, it's like, man, it smells like shit. So, random side note, and I'm glad you can't smell that, because, ugh. But yeah. It was just kind of funny because I said that, and then I got a whiff of it too. It's like, yeah, here we are. We're still where that's still a thing. Yeah. Anyway. So, I will say, of course, I ended up being wrong about the part where, that I thought I'd done my last video at my brother's house, because I'm sure I'll probably do more over there since I'll be hanging out with the dogs for 2 weeks. But of course, since I have my own dogs, I don't just stay there with them. But I do try to spend some time every day with them. We'll walk, and then of course try to spend a couple hours in the evening before I potty them one last time, and then go home and go to bed myself. Yeah, and get ready for all that fun stuff. It's just kind of tedious, I guess, more than anything. we're going to try to be optimistic, and we're going to try to remind myself to be, think of something we're grateful for every single time. And try to stay on the more uplifted mindset rather than letting myself get hung up in the tired and negativity or whatever. So if I'm mindful, I can usually stay on top of it better. But there again, especially now that I have less time that I'm choosing to spend around my family, even though I have to live with my parents at the moment. Temporary. And when I'm done, I'm done. Like, with all of them. So, yeah. I don't know. I don't know, I've been thinking about, like, some of the different spiritual things. Like this morning, I was thinking when I was in the shower about being connected to, connected to the soul group, right? So like the people that I'm meant to experience this life with whenever we come into each other's lives, right? We're getting there. That's been, for me, that's been hugely wrapped up in completely divorcing the family aspect of things too, because, we realize my family is toxic. And also, since I have all these damn cancer placements, of course, home and family is hugely important to me. So that's why it's been so hard for me to get out of the toxic situation. But I know that too serves a purpose. But yeah. But I was thinking, like, with the connectedness of everything, right? So, like going back to the flower of life, and it consists of 19 overlapping circles, and it's linked with the idea that everything is connected, right? Even if you can't necessarily see it, because it's, like one of those further out connections, it's still connected, right? So I was thinking about, like, this one person that, with all the other stuff that I know about the soul family group and, my activation point for, the 5 guys that I always saw, that are, like, they're going to be hugely important in my life. And then I realized while I was skating that they were basically, that was like the start activation point on my ascension journey, if you will. And it was coming into contact with their specific energies at the specific time where, all the things that are connected, all the lessons that they've learned in this life to get them to where they are currently and to put them in the situation where they were, like, in the band together. And then, where I was when I came across their music, and then got kind of activated into this thing that I didn't even realize was actually going on immediately. Just because 19. It's all connected. Anyway, one of the girls that I think I've talked about her before on here. Yeah, I mentioned that, like, she's on social media, and, like, there's something where she's got, like, it's a cleavage shot, and it took a while once I encountered her to choose to follow her, and initially it was because it's like the boobs right there. Right? And at first it was a little bit intimidating for me, I guess, is the biggest thing. And it's one of those things that I've talked about. It's like where I got to a point where it was like, okay, this is a me thing. This is not a her thing, right? So the fact that that's her picture and whatnot. It's like that she's free to do whatever she wants with her body and all that stuff. It's like, that's not for me to judge. What I need to, or my role in this, is to figure out why that bothers me so much. And of course it went right back to like the conditioning, and of course the the fact that my family basically pushed the idea that I had to believe myself to be a whore for like all my early years, before I even had any idea what sex was or anything. It's like they just automatically wanted me to believe that about myself, so I would behave and not make them look bad, right? So then, it kind of, there's a little bit of a judgy attitude there. So then when I come across her, and that's her picture, and it was like, but then eventually, like, there was another connection, and it's like, okay, well, I see what she's doing, I like what she's doing, so I started following her, and it's like, as I followed her, it's like, I like her even more. But of course, it was like, it's just this judgment piece because of what I'd been conditioned with, right? Because of the conditioning my world put me through, I wasn't okay with following this person on social media until I realized that's a me problem and I worked it out, right? And then, since then, I had this dream before I left my ex, and I was in like this, it was kind of like a castle. Like, it seems like there were like stone walls, and it was like a real high up building, but then somewhere there was a pool, and there were like really fancy chandeliers over the top of it, and yet it was also like, I think on one side it was completely open to the outdoors, and I think not a huge part of the two side walls, but a little bit of them. But I was there, and I don't know if there were 2 or 3 other women that I was with, but it seemed like we were sisters, right? And I've wondered if that was like another life where I was connected to this girl in particular. And I say that because the dream came back to mind after I started following her, and there started being some other connections there too. So it's like, okay, so it's like, okay, I'm pretty confident she's in this whole group, right? That I'm meant to find in this lifetime. So she had something where she was talking about, she's always wanted to be a mom, but she, for whatever reason, can't get pregnant, or I don't know the backstory, just the little overview that she mentioned a while back. Today, I was wondering if, this is going to sound completely off the wall, but hey, I think that's kind of, that's my strong suit at this point. We're just rolling with the off the wall shit. I wondered today if maybe part of the reason she hasn't been able to is connected to me back in high school, basically vowing that I would never have children unless I was able to heal the family shit that, my family was imposing upon me, right? So if I wasn't able to heal that shit, I didn't want to have kids because I didn't want to perpetuate this toxic cycle, right? So it's like I have to heal it before I'm willing to even consider that as a possibility. I know that sounds completely crazy, because why would those things be connected, except for everything's connected? So I feel like it is, even if it doesn't make sense logically, because it's a far out connection. But there again, that's kind of, I think, part of why I haven't done more in my life so far, is because, that going back to that, collecting data, and it's like, finding these far out connections that don't seem like they should be related at all, and yet finding that they do actually make sense together and connecting the dots together. And, like the biggest one right there that comes to mind immediately is, I've talked about how, part of the process for getting into the military, when I enlisted back in 2011, I had to go through this military entrance processing. That's what it was. MEPS. And it was like this big important thing that you had to be confirmed that you were what your birth certificate says you were, right? So my birth certificate said that I was a girl. So therefore they had to prove that before I went in. And the way of proving that is, something that's apparently been proposed for female sports, I guess recently, where, okay, so for that, the military shit, the big thing, you go into this room with all these other girls, and you're in your bras and your panties and your socks to keep your dignity, because socks definitely make me feel dignified. Anyway, and they do things to make sure your body works the way it's supposed to, like you duck walk to show you can do the squats and do the things to show that everything works like it's supposed to, your spine's all whatever and blah blah blah, and yeah. All the stuff they claim is so important before you can go in. And then the next part is, of course, we have to go one at a time into this room where there's the military doctors, or at least one doctor. I don't know if the other was actually a doctor, she was just the assistant in that space, because, you have to have 3 is your safe number, right? So if, like in basic training, if you ended up with a group of 3, the only time you could be a guy-girl combination to battle buddy somebody somewhere was if there was 2 guys or 2 girls, and they did not recommend 2 guys with 1 girl for obvious reasons, but, for obvious reasons with the military, since that's sexual assault is such a issue there. But 2, you have to have the 3 to be safe, right? So to make sure nobody can accuse anybody else of anything, there's this assistant person, right? So, and you, of course, you strip down and you get checked to make sure the outside parts and the inside parts verify what is on the birth certificate. Yeah. And when I've been thinking about this in hindsight and realizing, my earrings stuck on my neck, realizing that that's literally just to reinforce the opposite ends of the spectrum, right? So you have to be this or that. They don't give a shit about anybody falling anywhere in between. You have to, or at least at that point in time, you had to fall into either female or male, and it had to be lined up with what was on your birth certificate. And what I have realized was, that's basically setting up a system where it makes it okay for those that are, of course, meant to be in the military, those manly types, they're supposed to be the warriors and blah, blah, blah. It just further enhances the separation, right? So this is supposed to be here, that is not supposed to be here, but since that wanted to be here so badly, it makes it so it's okay for the this that's supposed to be there to assault the that that's not supposed to be there, because they're not supposed to be there because they're supposed to be at home raising the kids or whatever bullshit, right? So it's like, when I've been thinking back to the process, I had this this little vision where I kind of flashed to the scene in the movie Taken where, she's drugged up and on the stage, and, there's all these creepers behind the scenes that are like bidding on them, right, for the trafficking thing. And it's like, that is exactly the kind of system that makes room for the other system to exist. And I know that sounds like it's kind of far-fetched, but it's really not, like, once you start really thinking about it, because if you're so focused on the this or that and, locking everybody into one extreme or the other, for which is like politics too. There's like the far right, if you say anything that sounds remotely like remotely liberal, then the far right's going to accuse you of being far left. And the same thing with if you don't agree with the far left and you say something more conservative, then they're going to block or lock you into you must be far right. But it's like, that's fucked up, y'all. That was like one of the biggest things with like politics in general. It's like I've always seen myself, it's like I'm more liberal than conservative, but more conservative than liberal. And it's like, but the extremes don't like for anything else to exist. They want to keep it as this or that, and believe that if you are not completely like us, then you're the enemy. But like, the whole point of most of our existences is that we don't fall into the extremes, and we're here to try to build a bridge, right? And to find a better way to be and show that, there is a much better way to be than this or that, only one or the other, because that just keeps the system thriving, that allows for bullying to be like the main way of coercing people to do anything. It's like we can't have actual conversations and change each other's, or potentially change each other's perspective through a normal conversation, because it's demonized by the other side, right? So, yeah. But it's like, the fact that so many want to stay locked into the extremes is exactly why the bullying thing is so prevalent, and sexual assault and suicide, for that matter, because like in my experience of it, I always felt like incredibly alone because I didn't fit this, I didn't fit that. But it's like it wasn't okay to be authentically me either. But that's exactly what we're here to do, is like step into the full authenticity of who we are and who we're here to be, which is not what either extreme is trying to demand that you have to be. Like the system wants you to fall into this or that so it can separate you in a nice, easy way of doing things, and yet nobody fits that really. And like the freaking the dudes that want to claim to be the alpha males because like they're extremely extremely locked into like the patriarchal structure system. They claim to be alpha. It's like, dude, if you have to claim that you are something like that, is like you're already proving that you're not that, because you're trying to be that. And if you have to try it, and if you have to show all these things that prove that you are this way, it's because you're denying something of yourself that you haven't been able to come face to face with. Like my ex, I'm pretty sure for various reasons, I always had this sense that he was gay, but so far closeted he would never come out and admit to it. And that was a big part of where the narcissism came in at, because he had been wounded in his childhood by trying to, test the waters on whatever, and it, ended up in him being humiliated in a way. So because of that, he got to a point where he hated women, which is a pretty solid sign, honestly. But it's like, I always felt sorry for him. I always felt like he was so far closeted he would never come out, because, he had been shamed against it, which is really kind of not funny, haha, but interesting, considering that, he had an uncle and an aunt that were both gay. And his aunt, in the time that, he and I were together, they opened it up so his aunt and her partner were able to get married. So we went to their wedding at one point. So it's like, he's got these connections with people that are obviously that way, and yet for whatever reason, because of something that happened in his childhood, he was like hell-bent on being anything but, and trying to prove himself to be this manly type dude, and essentially justify his shitty treatment of women, because he definitely hated women, but I think it had more to do with the denial of who he was. That was the weirdest part. I had a dream at one point when we were together after we moved to Alabama that he had finally told me that he was, and I said, yeah, I know. But we had this conversation one day where I think he was trying to say enough about it to push me to shame him for the thoughts and feelings that he was having, and that's not who I am. So I didn't do it. And also because I kind of already knew. But then I feel like because of his shitty view of women, because of this thing, this part of himself that he's had to deny, partly I think his mom was the one that kind of shamed it, which was her brother and her sister. She was like one of 7, so it was like, like that right there. It's like, yeah. But when I didn't push him to feel bad about this thing, it amped up the shitty behavior toward me. It's like, well, since I didn't shame him for it, then, obviously I'm the enemy, because he knows it's wrong and he's not supposed to be this way, and that, yet he, if I encourage it at all, or, yeah, I know this is the thing that you're struggling with, it's like, suddenly, since it doesn't align with the beliefs he has of himself, then I'm now the enemy, right? So it's like, the relationship was never good, don't get me wrong. And knowing that, that piece where I always thought he was gay and just so far closeted that he would never come out, when I went through basic training and AIT and all that stuff and discovered that I was stronger and more capable of more things than I thought I was, and then I was trying to figure out who I am in the world, that because of course, I went National Guard so I could still be around family, because it was important to me, because like my my fucking thing said, I basically merged with my environment and took on all these thoughts and beliefs of my family, and that was kind of my where I was operating from. So then I go into the military. I find out I'm stronger and more capable of anything than I had ever given myself credit for. So then when I was coming out and trying to make sense of that with being back in the environment I came out of, it wasn't easy. It was very difficult. And then I've, of course, ended up it was the free dating app. And very much I got what I paid for. So yeah. But yeah, since I didn't know anything else about myself, but I knew I liked helping people, and I knew he had a lot of stuff that I could help him with, and it was like custody stuff and whatnot. It's like I trying to make sense of things on that end. It's like that's how I got into that situation. But that was still largely because of my own toxic ways of thinking about myself, for one thing, because my family, they're very much set in this or that, and keeping my grandfather's illusion that he is like this amazing specimen of whatever. Yeah, he's basically the biggest bullshitter of anybody I knew. And my ex was second to him, but still, like, those two were like the worst, and then they, had so much influence on my experiences and, what I was learning of myself anyway. Anyway, I knew I liked to help people. So then I took on a project, and that's definitely not a good way to do it. And I will never again end up in a situation where I have to try to help raise somebody's kid. That is fucked up. Do not do that. And but that, like, even that, it's like that was my own toxicity that got me there, because I lived in this situation where I was basically forced to be in an agreement because everybody's trying to keep my grandfather's illusion alive, and because I was the scapegoat. Then I tried conforming to their bullshit system. I tried my entire life, and it was like the big thing was when I divorced my ex, I had to divorce my belief system too, because that was what got me there, and that wasn't good. And then finding that too stemmed from the family thing even further. So it's like I'm just now making sense of who I am and who I am supposed to be in this world, not based on their standards and what they told me I had to be in order to be acceptable. So it's like that's the big thing on there, right? How did I end up on that tangent? Because that, like, the thing I remember from wandering off, or that got me wandering off, had to do with the part with the military entrance processing and verifying that I am inside and out physically what my birth, or in agreement with what my birth certificate says. Military proven to be female. Like that's some sort of like big claim to fame. See, and I think the reason why that part is so important for my journey has been because that is one of like the first things that those that are very set on the patriarchal types, if women start speaking up and being too vocal for what their system tolerates, one of the first things they always go after is claiming you're a man or trying to insult you by saying you're trans or whatever. And it's like, See, I'm confident that, like, 100% confident that is that big piece for me. So when I get to a point where people start saying that shit about me, and it's not, I've had people do that in my lifetime, but not because I've been threateningly mouthy. Like, I feel like I'm starting to step into being. um, but it's like that's always the one of the biggest insults that they want to hit you with, is, or that they deem as an insult. But it's like, the only reason they consider that an insult is because they're so locked into the separateness of the dualistic way of being, and not recognizing that it's a whole ass spectrum, and you can fall anywhere on the spectrum for any reason, and how you want to demonstrate whatever you want to demonstrate of yourself is not for them to say. But they still want to, because they're so set on, if you're not this or that, then you're a problem. But it's like, most of us aren't this or that. Most of us are just somewhere in the middle of the extreme, but because we're here to build this bridge between all these different things, right? But things being connected, 19. It's like, just because you, okay, like, because I'm making these connections, a lot of people aren't going to make these same connections, but that's part of the thing that I'm here to do. That's where me being authentically me, and speaking to what I do know, and what the visions that I've had, and seeing how these things are connected, and like realizing that stupid MEPS process that I had to go through back in 2011 to prove my military worthiness, which didn't prove anything except for that that physically I lined up with what was on my birth certificate. That's literally the only thing that proved. But that didn't prove I was capable of doing anything in the military. But yet the reason that I went into the military is there's something with that warrior spirit, the one that's willing to stand up against the bullshit. I guess it's the biggest piece of that. But because I'm here as a piece of building the bridge, of course the far extremes aren't going to like me, right? So they're not going. They don't like anything that doesn't fit into this or that system. But most of us don't fit into this or that system. It's not exclusively one thing or the other. But it's like, by demonizing the other, all it does is, like, for the patriarchal types, is separate them from empathy. And apparently there's a thing, like, with the fucking Christian church at this point in time, trying to demonize empathy, and it's a sin and all the shit. It's like, that just, oh my god, oh, so many things. It just goes to support the fact that they would kill Jesus if he was here now too. The church that wants to use Jesus' name to demonize everybody else, the church is the Antichrist, because it's very much anti what he stood for, and yet they're doing all these things in his name and claiming that they have him because they, supposedly worship him, and yet they don't do anything like he did, like that, the whole, what you do for the least of these, you did for me thing, right? They know. They're trying to make it harder for the least of these, and, make it harder to exist because you don't fit in nicely into the this or that, right? Or just because whatever bullshit they're doing. Yeah. But it's like, oh god, okay. I had this interesting thought recently too. I keep hearing people talking about, like, gatekeeping and, like, metal music and whatnot, and if you listen to this or this but not this, then you're not the right kind of metal, you're not actually metal or whatever. It's like the whole idea of gatekeepers. Then I started thinking about the idea of gatekeeping at heaven. And it's like, I think what gatekeeping comes to, both at the heavenly space, if you want to count it that, it's the thing that you truly love, right? So there are the gatekeepers in metal music trying to keep their idea of metal, with the pure way, like you have to see everything their way. But it's like, that's kind of the idea, like with the pearly gates thing. It's like the thing that you love, and you don't want people that are going to tarnish that to come in and try to like piss all over what you're doing. And so therefore it makes sense for these gatekeeping types to exist. But it's like, that's exactly what that is. It's something that you love, your heaven on earth, so to speak, and trying to keep out those that don't fit for whatever reason you deem they don't fit, right? Anyway, this song I was just playing with recently, and it's like, oh, because in the metal was the big thing because I I have a great appreciation for what metal does and like different aspects of it. Like, okay, on this whole journey, that Rotting Christ song that I always go back to, Apage Satana. It's like, the fact that, I looked up the lyrics and like the translation of what they were saying, and it's the Lord's Prayer. It's like, man, because metal does whatever the fuck metal wants to do, and it can like scare the shit out of everybody because it sounds really scary, right? But then it's that, and it's like, oh, that's awesome. And then the idea of like, basically is like this whole group of people that have been made to believe or tried to be made to believe, rather, like the Christian types demonize the darkness and, metal music and all that stuff because they don't get it, ultimately. But then, like, the fact that they don't get it is, like, what makes some of this stuff even better. Like, that's the fucking Lord's Prayer. And, like, I can tell playing that song around my dad, like, it annoys him. It's like, when the translation is, like, begone Satan, it's like, that speaks more to your demons than anything else. And I think that's hilarious. So, and then kind of that connection piece on, like, being refined by the fire. We're here, and it's like, this physical space is literally hell because we forget all about who we are as far as everything is connected. And what any one of us chooses to do, it might not be immediately noticeable, but it still affects the whole of us, right? So the ones that do end up committing suicide or whatever, it's like, there's a hole in the fabric of the collective that person was supposed to fill, right? But then when things got too hard and they accept the separation or the idea of the separation, that's when, like, you really, the disconnect, right? Feeling like what you do doesn't matter. The pain of existing is because, we think we're not connected, but really we're all connected. And that's like what we're here to try to piece together, and why some of us, like, have certain details that the others are meant to learn from. Yeah. But then, like thinking about, like, the phoenix rising, and being refined by the fires, like, literally the fire of, like, the pain of existing in a space where you think you're separated from everything, just to find out at the end of the day you're not. We're all connected, and, like, everything, the healing that we do for our own individual journey affects the whole, right? And as any one of us works to do our healing, it helps heal the whole. And so, yeah, like, the people that want to stay locked into the this or that, it's like, that's why there are so many of us at so many different places between the extremes, because we're trying to build the bridge so that we all come back to that place of connectivity and realizing that we are connected. Yeah. Like, my brother, he's kind of funny. He listens to some, like, heavier stuff than I do, but he's also, like, the reason I got introduced to the Rotting Christ to begin with, and, like, several others. Like, he's been, like, the main. He's been introducing me to, like, different groups throughout my life, and he's the reason I started listening to Metallica when I was 8. And like, for them, it was the song Unforgiven, and just, like, the words of the song, like, the feeling of the song. It's like, I feel this all the way through, and I just always got, like, I was really hung up on that song. And I've listened to that song more than I've listened to most of their music, but I love them immensely because they have been such a huge part of my journey. But that goes into that piece on the beacons, right? So, like, the Dolores canon talks about the 3 waves of volunteers in the New Earth, right? So there's the beacons, which, it's not easy for them necessarily to get to the point where they, fully stand in their light and are there for, like, the rest of us to look to. I've talked about, like, one of the biggest things, like, okay, Keanu Reeves helped me get out of my toxic marriage, right? So, and it wasn't by anything he did in my life, obviously. Never met the dude at all. What it was at a time it's like all my ex's really bad behaviors was, like, getting amplified and, like, being glaringly obvious in my face, and he's making the comments about should have raped me when he had the chance and all this bullshit. In that time frame, there was the thing with, what was it, Bakersfield, California. There was something where, like, a flight didn't end up working out, and Keanu ended up renting out a bus for everybody to get back to where they were going. And then it starts, like, this big thing where, like, everybody was talking about, like, the different ways that he had positively influenced people that he's actually met, right? And it was like this big thing that's like, this one story comes out, and then suddenly there's, like, all these stories everywhere talking about how wonderful of a human he is. And I remember, sitting there with my ex and being irritated at him for something, and always having this sense of, this is not my home. And then coming up with, like, sitting there watching all this stuff with, like, Keanu, and having this thought come into my mind of, if there's one, there are more. Those are your people. Find them. And that was, like, one of the biggest keys on getting me out of the toxic marriage and helping me on this journey to figuring out who I am and who I'm supposed to be in this whole thing. And, doing this, my lived out talk therapy in this YouTube space, to share my story and what I've been learning along the way, and, just allowing it to be available for anybody else that happens to come across it whenever the universe deems it's time for them to come across it. Right? So it's like, that's literally what I'm supposed to be doing at this point in time. And while I can't say that I think it's done anything huge at this point in time, I feel like it's still very essential for laying the foundation of what is being done, because a lot of the things that, that I've talked about, that I very much believe on here, even if I sound crazy for believing them, it's like the fact that I have all these different levels of things, and the things that have been following me my entire life, like the knowings that I had when I was 18, a senior in high school, and, seeing my friend Tyler die, and then actually seeing Tyler die. Well, I wasn't there, but, the process. And I did get to visit with him one last time before he died. And, then the one where I knew that I would be 40 before things started to make sense for me. And here again, at 41, that's like literally, like, there have been several things in that time that I have been intentional about the intention setting, and actually, I've seen myself become something I thought I wasn't capable of before, because I bought into the bullshit my family tried to lock me into, the system of this or that. And because I was that, and very much not a part of my grandfather's, or keeping my grandfather's illusion alive, I was the one that was demonized, because, I was the different one. I was the most different. I was the one that was going to cause a problem for his illusion, so. And because I realized, like, the full extent of how, that affected my entire family's connection with me and my connection to them, it's like, that's changed everything, and like now I'm still, obviously, like today I went around them, but I don't have a whole lot to do with them. And my mom tries to make me feel bad because she remembers a time where I don't remember, I was laughing about something that was stupid that was happening with my family, and said, I just love family. I was like, it's like, just because I said that at that time, it's like, I had myself somewhat convinced of the illusion for a brief, or I was trying to, I think is the bigger part, for a brief span of time, I was trying to convince myself that the family wasn't toxic. And, like, I didn't fully see it's been this talk therapy thing that's made me realize how toxic it has been, and how hard it's been for me to try to exist. Keeping in mind that little bit with, like, the Cancer Mercury and Cancer Moon and all these damn Cancer placements anyway. And then just add more water with this whole Neptune complex thing, because I just needed that. Yeah. It's like, I don't know. Anyway, I'm like pushing an hour and a half, and I still want to take this chair back over to the storage unit before that closes. And what time is it? 7:42. I still have a few minutes, but yeah, that's all right. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. It's long enough. Yeah. So, as always, I appreciate you. Until the next time. See ya.